I think that Jesse's conscience is probably not letting him sleep right now, so I think he should unload that conscience and just come out and tell the American people what actually happened.
Lots happening for you this morning. It is Thursday, February 21st, and this is Fox and Friends First. Happening right now at 4 a.m. here on the East Coast. This Fox News alert for you. The tables have turned. Empire star Jussie Smollett now facing criminal charges, and it could be just the beginning. The breaking developments and what could come next for the actor. And the hits just keep coming for the FBI. The Bureau's former top lawyer now admits that he wanted Hillary Clinton charged in the private email scandal. So who talked him out of it? And Honest Abs, the statue of our former president that is lighting up social media. Fox and Friends First starts right now. Now it's a little bit icy and messy out there. We'll check out the weather across the country coming up. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Thursday morning. I'm Heather Childers. Thank you so much, as always, for starting your day with us. And did you hear about this Fox News alert? Empire actor Jussie Smollett charged with a felony for allegedly staging a hate crime attack. Now, he is due in court for a bond hearing in Chicago this afternoon. Prosecutors say that he filed a false police report claiming masked men put a noose around his neck, poured chemicals on him, and shouted MAGA country, along with racial and homophobic slurs. If convicted, Smollett could spend 3 years in prison. But his attorneys say he, quote, enjoys the presumption of innocence. Now, the bombshell charges, they come after surveillance video came to light showing a pair of brothers buying red hats and ski masks just hours before the alleged attack. Those brothers, questioned by police, have claimed Smollett paid them to stage the assault. Their lawyer says the actor needs to come clean.
I think Jussie Smollett should come clear because the truth will set him free. I think that Jussie's conscience is probably not letting him sleep right now, so I think he should unload that conscience and just come out and tell the American people what actually happened.
Well, Empire producers are reportedly considering suspending Smollett from the show as the investigation unfolds, and we'll have much more on this coming up. Well, Jussie Smollett's story quickly, of course, went viral with the help of Hollywood stars and Democratic politicians. Katie Pavlich, news editor for townhall.com, says that their calls for justice not only validated Smollett's claims, but they put a target on anyone who supports President Trump.
The left has used identity politics for decades to divide and conquer in this country. When you throw in a media narrative that assumes that anybody who accuses a MAGA supporter of any kind of wrongdoing, that person is guilty, that only adds fuel to the fire. And the truth is that journalists in this country, at the highest levels in this case, they didn't always use alleged. They in fact smeared the entire country and said, this is America in 2019, this is the situation. Journalists should not be assigning innocence or blame based on gender and skin color. They should be assigning it based on the facts. And the issue here is not necessarily believing his initial story as a victim when it came forward. It was painting all MAGA Trump supporters as racist, as they have done since Donald Trump took office in 2016.
Well, during the investigation, Chicago police dedicated 24 detectives to the Smollett case. New overnight for you, the FBI's former top lawyer wanted to charge Hillary Clinton over her private email use, but was apparently talked out of it. Fox News confirming that James Baker admitted this, and it came in a closed-door testimony on Capitol Hill.
And he continued to battle, according to his own testimony, with people in his office, along with Comey as well. He had these arguments going back and forth until the very end.
Well, despite calling Clinton's private email use, quote, alarming and appalling, Baker told lawmakers that he was convinced to change his mind after arguments with senior colleagues. Now, this is important because the FBI has consistently claimed top officials agreed with former Director James Comey's decision to not pursue charges against Clinton. A special counsel Robert Mueller's probe is expected to wrap up, possibly as early as next week. Sources telling Fox News that recent shakeups at the Justice Department are a sign that the investigation is winding down. Meanwhile, President Trump is slamming the former acting director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe.
Well, I think Andrew McCabe has made a fool out of himself over the last couple of days, and he really looks to me like sort of a poor man's J. Edgar Hoover. I think he's a disaster.
Well, McCabe has, of course, done several TV interviews recently where he has opened up about launching investigations into President Trump and alleged Russian ties. He's even suggested that the president would be a Russian agent. Well, a brand new wave of migrants arrive at the Mexican border ready to cross into the U.S., and they're now camped out near the same border wall that potential 2020 candidate Beto O'Rourke wants to destroy. Griff Jenkins is live for us on the ground in Mexico with the caravan as those migrants prepare to start their day. Good morning, Griff.
Hey, good morning, Heather. Yeah, border cities just like this one, Ciudad Juarez, are being flooded with migrants because of the repeated caravans. Just yesterday, Mexican officials saying that a new caravan of more than 1,000 people clashed with officials of Mexico's southern border and came across here. But this here, the Casa del Migrante, is one of two shelters here in Ciudad Juarez that's being flooded. You can see there is a small police presence here in the barbed wire fence. They're trying to put them in a secure area. But if you look at the other shelter across town that we got into, you can see, excuse me, more than 600 or 700 people sleeping there trying to get processed because they're waiting for the asylum. Now, let me show you in El Paso the numbers, that the overwhelming border impact they're getting here. They're seeing a 478% increase in the El Paso sector. In this year, fiscal year 19, they've already, as of this week, had 43,238 illegal crossing apprehensions. Compared to last year, fiscal year 18, that's 7,481. Meanwhile, you also are in a town of a lot of violence, and we talked to one of the migrants here that said that he's worried about immigration, he's worried about the cartels, and he says, by the way, it's still okay if they take down the wall. He just doesn't want a wall on the southern part of Mexico. Listen, this is Randy Davidson. When you hear the Democrat candidates say, take the wall down, there should not be a wall, how do you feel about that?
Very comfortable. I guess if you ask many people here what they feel about that, they're going to say, that's like very comfortable.
Take the wall down.
Take the wall down.
And Heather, Randy's not comfortable at the violence in this city, Ciudad Juarez, once the most violent cities in the world. They are seeing a 6-year high in terms of the murder rate that's increasing. Meanwhile, the DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was in El Salvador yesterday meeting with regional ministers trying to get some sort of agreement on what to do with this irregular migration. Heather?
All right, we'll have much more on this throughout the day as well. Griff, thank you so much, as always, for your coverage down there. Well, a Coast Guard lieutenant accused of plotting a mass terror attack on the U.S. is due in court today. Now, prosecutors say that Christopher Paul Hassan had a hit list of possible targets, including Democratic leaders and journalists. He also wanted to kill, quote, every last person on Earth. The self-proclaimed white nationalist stockpiling 15 firearms with more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition in his basement in Maryland. He is facing weapons and drugs charges, but officials say that that is just the tip of the iceberg. And the Trump administration refusing to allow an American ISIS bride into the United States. Hoda Muthana left Alabama to join the terror group in Syria back in 2014. And now she's begging to come back home with her 18-month-old son. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says that she's not even an American citizen, writing this in part. She does not have any legal basis, no valid U.S. passport, no right to a passport, nor any visa to travel to the United States. Her family lawyer denies that claim, saying that she is a citizen and that she was born in New Jersey. The reason the State Department does not consider her a citizen is because her father was a diplomat. Well, this is a live look at the Vatican, where Pope Francis is hosting a summit to address sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. Starting today, church leaders from around the world are meeting with high-ranking Vatican officials to focus on ways to move forward. The 4-day summit will address transparency, the responsibility of bishops, and holding church leaders accountable. And today, Roger Stone heads to court to address a threatening photo of a federal judge. President Trump's former advisor has apologized for posting the picture on Instagram showing Judge Amy Berman Jackson next to crosshairs of a gun. Well, she is now considering whether to revoke his release or his limited gag order. Stone has pleaded not guilty to lying to Congress and witness tampering in the Russia probe. Well, it is now about 15 minutes after the top of the hour, and the expected release of Robert Mueller's report on Russia has many asking, what comes next? Will anyone else be charged? Attorney David Bruno says Democrats will be extremely disappointed, and he is here live to explain why. And thanks for nothing, a Times Square billboard slamming Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, how the freshman congresswoman just responded overnight. Will the report be released while you're abroad next week?
That'll be totally up to the new Attorney General. He's a tremendous man, a tremendous person who really respects this country and respects the Justice Department. So that'll be totally up to him.
Well, after nearly 2 years, the Mueller probe may finally be coming to an end. We've heard that before, though. The special counsel's report could be submitted as early as next week. So what can we expect? Here to discuss is criminal defense attorney David Bruno. David, we've had this conversation plenty of times.
Yes, we have.
But what about the timing of this? Let's just begin there next week, because obviously the president will be in Vietnam for the North Korea summit. William Barr just having taken over. What is going on here?
Yeah, I think it's the Barr nomination that's most important to point out, because Rod Rosenstein was running this investigation only because AG Sessions had recused himself.
Right.
Now that Barr comes in, he is in fact the leader of this investigation. So it's up to him to run it, and he could have said, end it, or it could have been time. It could have been Mueller's time where naturally this came to an end, but we just won't know at this point. But there have been reports that this is going to close out next week. And let's just be careful, because we've heard this before, and I will believe it when I see it.
In terms of, we were just talking about this during the commercial break, though, because people will say, well, William Barr's coming in there, he's protecting the president, he's wrapping it up before it's complete. Could he have done that if Mueller's side of it was not complete?
Yes.
He could have.
Yes,
Okay.
because Rosenstein was only running this because of the recusal. Now Barr is the Attorney General. The buck stops at the end with William Barr. So, yeah, but I don't think that's the case, because that will be political suicide, because ultimately this will come out. There are going to be many questions asked about this report, why it ended, and I just don't think that they would go down that road.
And what do you think will come out? What will the public be privy to next week if it happens?
That's the big question. The regulations, the federal regulations say that Mueller has to give a confidential report to AG William Barr. Thereafter, it's his discretion, and the federal regulation says that the briefing to Congress is brief.
Well,
so there's no requirement that he has to give verbatim the same report that he gets from Mueller.
Well, I know you said be careful, but the rumor is that it's showing nothing, that there is no collusion. I want to talk to you about this, though. James Comey, the FBI's obviously top lawyer, James Baker, I should say, wanted to charge Hillary Clinton over her private email server, but was talked out of it.
Yeah, well, when Comey gave his press conference announcing no charges, one of the things he said was no reasonable prosecutor would agree to bring these criminal charges. Now, many of us, including myself, jumped out and said, no, we disagree with that. But now we're learning that there was actually a reasonable prosecutor in the room. You know, there was Baker there saying that there's enough to charge, reportedly. And if that's the case, it just debunks that public statement of James
That
Comey.
they all agreed with him.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens next with this? Anything?
Well,
Does it even matter?
on the Clinton email,
Yeah.
there's plenty. Listen, the House is controlled by Democrats, and they will do everything that they can to further investigate Russian interference. Let's not forget, Senate is controlled by the Republicans, so they still have the ability to investigate. I would expect an investigation on the Russian interference investigation, including Hillary Clinton. I don't think that story is going away anytime soon with the Republicans controlling the Senate.
Yeah, Russian interference going all the way back to Uranium One.
Mueller's been here for 2 years, but let's not forget the investigation was opened in 2016. We're coming up to 4 years now where this has been being looked at.
All right, we'll see what happens next week, if anything.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, we've heard it before. We'll have you come back. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Well, the time now is about 18 minutes after the top of the hour, and Colin Kaepernick just settled his grievance with the NFL for reported $80 million, and now Nike is honoring him as an icon. Well, it's the New Jersey everyone is talking about, and Carly Shimkus is sharing reaction up next.
You come behind
Suspect Jussie Smollett now charged with a felony as his story about that alleged hate attack continues to spiral. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7 Sirius XM 115 is here with the online reaction. This was blowing up social media, but interestingly enough, not trending on Twitter.
Yeah, well, listen, there was a lot of reaction to this and a lot of anger among people on social media. The case really shifted when investigators spoke to the two brothers, and now their attorney is really encouraging Smollett, in her opinion, to come clean. Smollett's attorneys responded saying detectives will make contact with his legal team to negotiate a reasonable surrender for arrest. That's actually the Chicago Police Department saying that he's
supposed to be there, I think, by 1:30 this afternoon.
Yeah, I believe that's Central Time. Now, Smollett's attorneys defended him, saying Mr. Smollett enjoys the presumption of innocence, particularly when it has been an investigation like this one, where information, both true and false, has been repeatedly leaked. Now, let's get to the social media reaction on this, because like I said, a lot of people are very angry right now. Gregory says, "Thank you, Chicago police. Throw the book at him for wasting police time. Your faithful officers have enough to do instead of going on a wild goose chase." Conservative commentator Charlie Kirk also saying, "Imagine hating a president so much you first try to send yourself a hateful letter to get attention. Once that doesn't work, you hire two guys to stage a hate crime, rehearse it, fail miserably in the execution of it, still go with the hoax, then lie about it till you get arrested." Smollett has maintained his innocence throughout this whole thing, but he does face a possibility of 1 to 3 years.
Yeah, and federal charges related to the letter, if he was involved in that, the letter that he allegedly or possibly sent to himself. Threatening letter. So let's talk about Nike, though. Releasing this limited edition Colin Kaepernick jersey after this huge NFL settlement.
Bingo! And Kaepernick, he promoted that jersey on Twitter, saying, "For those true to themselves on and off the field, proudly, unapologetically, and against all odds, this is only the beginning." You saw a photo of the jersey there. Nike released a statement on this new partnership saying, "We believe Colin Kaepernick is one of the most inspirational athletes of this generation who has leveraged the power of sport to help move the world forward." Like everything related to Colin Kaepernick, this has polarized social media. One Twitter user says, "I hope nobody wastes their money on this." Patrick tweets, "As they've been saying, it's all about the money." And Thomas on Facebook says, "I will save my money for a jersey from a player that's accomplished something on the field, not in the media." Well, guess what? A whole lot of people did buy it. Just a few hours ago, Kaepernick posted a tweet saying, "The jersey sold out."
Wow, okay. But very polarizing. Possibly going to my Carolina Panthers. Mixed feelings on that from people.
It will be amazing if he plays football again after all this.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I think he wants to, obviously. So finally, what in the world? Why is all I have to say about this shirtless ape?
Ryan tweets, "Is he trying to get Justice to take off her blindfold?" Oh my. And
or
another Twitter user says, "A separation of shirt and state." This is where social media is at its best, with all of these funny responses.
Clever.
This isn't a new statue either. It's been there since the 1930s.
People just now noticing, though.
Very uncomfortable.
1930s. All right, thank you so much, Carly. Appreciate it. Well, the time now is about 26 minutes after the top of the hour. Vladimir Putin, this kind of got buried, threatening to target the U.S. if missiles are deployed to Europe. So how should the U.S. respond? This is an important story. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis says if we're too aggressive, it could backfire. He joins us live to explain. And who thought this was a good idea? The zoo letting kids play tug of war with lions and tigers. Welcome back. You're watching Fox and Friends First. Back with our top stories and a Fox News alert. Empire actor Jussie Smollett charged with a felony for allegedly staging a hate crime attack. He is due in court for a bond hearing in Chicago this afternoon. Prosecutors say that he filed a false police report claiming masked men put a noose around his neck, poured chemicals on him, and shouted MAGA country, along with racial and homophobic slurs. If convicted, Smollett could spend 3 years in prison. Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe early as next week. Sources telling Fox News that recent shakeups at the Justice Department are a sign that the investigation is winding down. It's chemicals on him and shouted MAGA country, along with racial and homophobic slurs. If convicted, Smollett could spend 3 years in prison. Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe is expected to wrap up as early as next week. Sources telling Fox News that recent shakeups at the Justice Department are a sign that the investigation is winding down. It's unclear if a big progress on a Homeland Security project. President Trump sharing this time-lapse video. It's pretty cool of crews building a portion of the new border wall. And the president tweeting, quote, "We have just built this powerful wall in New Mexico, completed on January 30th, 2019, 47 days ahead of schedule. Many miles more now under construction. Finish the wall." Now, this section of border wall features those steel slats that we've heard so much about. Pretty neat. But what about this, though? Russian President Vladimir Putin taking a veiled shot at the U.S., vowing to retaliate if America deploys missiles to Europe.
Russia will be forced to create and deploy new types of weapons that could be used not only against the territories where a direct threat to us comes from, but also against the territories where decision-making centers directing the use of missile systems threatening us are located.
Or maybe not so veiled. So how should the U.S. respond to this increased aggression from Moscow? Here now to weigh in is senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So we didn't want this to fly under the radar because it certainly seems important. What should the U.S. do and how should we respond?
Well, see, this is the reason why we have the most powerful military on the planet and the most sophisticated nuclear deterrent on the planet, because there's no country in the world that's going to attack the United States with nuclear weapons, because there's no country on the world that's going to survive our nuclear response. Vladimir Putin is very aware of this, and he's certainly not going to actually take any action that would harm his own country. Now, he's also very media savvy, and you can bet that every word of that speech was intentionally chosen and intended for an American audience, because what he wants is to create fear of him and to elevate the threat that he poses which is not the truth. So he doesn't want that.
And what is his stated reason behind this?
Well, see, from his perspective, the INF Treaty prevented short-range missiles on either side, of either the Cold War between Russia or NATO, and so it's in his interest to not have that. So he wants that to be kept in place. So he wants to threaten NATO and the United States to not deploy any new missiles. And frankly, I think that's also in our interest, because we don't want to ratchet up tensions, and it's not in our interest to poke the bear unnecessarily.
But is that what we pulled out of? Is that what we were talking about in terms of they were not keeping up their end of the bargain? They weren't doing what they were supposed to do?
Right, that is the claim. We're claiming that their, I believe it's the CSS-8 missile was in violation of the INF Treaty. They have a counterclaim that some of our interceptors are actually violating the treaty as well. And so both of us are claiming the same thing. But the bottom line is that we have now pulled out of it. They have pulled out of it. And at least it opens the possibility that there's going to be the introduction of new missiles. But again, I cannot stress enough, that is not in our interest. We don't need to do that, because our deterrent overall is far capable of overwhelming anything that Russia might want to do with that.
What about this possibility of Russia claiming that they've developed this missile that can fly 9 times the speed of sound with a range of 620 miles? Do you think that is propaganda as well?
It may be, but we can't really take the risk that that's not the case. But really, it goes down to the bottom line is we can deter Russia indefinitely, as we have for decades, because of our strong deterrent otherwise. So what we don't want to do is inflate the threat and be more afraid than we're supposed to, because we're actually very secure because of our nuclear deterrent. So what Russia says, a lot of it's just frankly propaganda designed to create fear, and we really don't need to buy into that.
All right. Lieutenant Colonel Davis, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Important topic.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes until the top of the hour. And Empire actor Jussie Smollett charged with a felony, facing 3 years in prison. But it may only get worse. The former prosecutor is here to break it down and tell us what could happen next.
Think about what this young boy is having to deal with at age 16 when the entire world saw him the way the media portrayed him as literally the face of evil.
Yeah, the Covington Catholic students attorney, big attorney there, Lynn Wood, speaking out on the heels of suing the Washington Post. What the lawsuit is really about, just ahead. Well, back with the Fox News Alert, the tables seem to have turned for actor Jussie Smollett. Chicago police now officially approving felony charges, saying that he filed a false police report. As Chicago PD's chief communications officer tweeting, detectives will make contact with his legal team to negotiate a reasonable surrender for his arrest. So, what happens next? Supposedly, he's supposed to turn himself in this afternoon. Joining me now with some expert insight is attorney Elliot Feelig. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Wow, what a wild ride this story has been.
Unbelievable, but there were so many red flags right from the outset on this, and I don't know how so many people in the media, so many people who should have known better, missed it.
Yeah, to listen to all the facts first, and that wasn't done, you were just discussing, by several well-known media outlets.
Well, look, anytime someone comes forward with a story where they're the only eyewitness and the facts are completely consistent with their pre-existing political narrative right there, you got to be suspicious. But then let's get into the underlying facts. 2 a.m. on the street in Chicago, a city that voted 7-1 for Hillary Clinton, polar vortex. 2 Trump supporters are running around with robe and bleach in hand. He says they recognized him from the show Empire. I haven't seen the Venn diagram on this, but I think that the overlap between hardcore MAGA supporters and hardcore Empire fans is a pretty narrow sliver. He says he heroically fought them off, and in the midst of this, they announce their political views and say, "You're in MAGA country." None of this passes the smell test. But the real kicker, when the cops show up and they ask to look at his phone, which is real evidence, he won't give over his phone. How does this not reek of suspicion?
But I have to ask you, I mean, we can put up what his attorneys are saying. They are saying and sticking by it, Mr. Smollett enjoys a presumption of innocence, particularly when there has been an investigation like this one, where information they claim has been both true and false, and you can read the rest of their statement there.
Sure.
How do they possibly go in today and defend him? What will be their story?
Look, they're just going to enter a plea of not guilty. They're going to be handed a copy of the indictment. He's got bigger problems, though, because he's facing separate federal
and talk about
felony.
that.
Sure, he may have orchestrated this letter that contained white powder and a threat. Even if he knew the powder was nothing more than crushed Tylenol, if anyone at that facility was put in fear because of the letter, then that's a separate potential charge of terroristic threat. And if he lied to any FBI officials investigating it, that's also a separate crime. So he could face this state felony indictment, could face a separate federal felony indictment, could face consecutive time.
Wow. So actually, on that note, let's bring up the potential punishments for the felony disorderly conduct alone. That would be imprisonment of 1 to 3 years, up to a $25,000 fine. But as you were saying, it could get much worse.
Could get much worse because the federal charge would be a separate sovereign bringing charges, and it's a separate incident, so you could face consecutive time. State time for the incident on the street, falsely reporting, federal time for the fake terroristic threat.
What about paying back the Chicago PD for the amount of time they spent on this case, time that they had to take away from other cases, murders, as we know Chicago has a problem with?
Right. 12 detectives apparently assigned to this. So, yeah, they could go after him for restitution of that as well.
Do you think that they will?
They should.
Is there a precedent for that?
Absolutely. And a gentleman, regarding the letter, a gentleman in Texas who was sending fake powder letters got 5 years for that.
And it could open up the door, I mean, because you were talking about all of this misinformation, all of the Hollywood stars that jumped on board, the media.
It's one thing for a few Hollywood celebrity lightweights to go on Twitter, but how does someone like Don Lemon, and I don't mean to pick on him, okay, but he's the one who said I spoke with Jussie right after the incident. How does Don Lemon look his viewers in the eye and say, I'm not so gullible that I'll believe any story that fits my political narrative, no matter how far-fetched that story may be on its face?
And this isn't the the first time, though, that we've dealt with, a hoax-type crime.
So many hoaxes, it's as if there's this voracious media appetite for these things, and there are people willing to feed that appetite.
And people know that, so they do this to get the attention? Is that
I think to get the attention because they know there's this huge audience for it. But how do the people who fell for this hook, line, and sinker, how do they maintain their credibility?
Well, and then legally, is there anything that can be done in the future looking at this case and looking at the fact that this isn't the first time that this has happened that can be done in terms of hoaxes?
I would hope
the media specifically.
I would hope the media will be more suspicious. I have my doubts because this happened just 3 weeks after the Covington incident, where the media jumped to conclusions. And I guess the legislators could enhance penalties for reporting hoaxes.
And not just the media, though, but social media spreading it as if it's fact.
How about Kamala Harris? She's billing herself as a presidential candidate as a former prosecutor. She fell for it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, and it's interesting how maybe quiet that side has been the past 24 hours.
Suddenly a different tune. Suddenly it's, let's wait for the facts to come out. Hey guys, you could have said that 3 weeks ago.
So what happens today?
Today he'll be brought before a judge. He'll be given a formal written copy of the indictment. He'll be told the actual charges against him. They'll probably put it over because he doesn't have a criminal record or a long criminal record. He'll be given the opportunity to post bail.
And the two brothers?
And the two brothers appear to be cooperating. So even if they haven't gotten formal immunity, they've gotten de facto immunity because they're clearly working with the prosecutors.
Yeah, someone said they didn't need to be given immunity because they were telling the truth or something like that. I think
right,
their attorney.
And if they did nothing more than engage in a fake fight and they didn't lie to the police after, that's not a crime.
All right, Elliot, thank you so much. Fascinating, really. We'll see what happens. Well, the time now is about 15 minutes until the top of the hour. And here's a quote for you. I'd rather starve and close. The store owner facing some backlash for refusing business from Trump supporters. And the new Samsung foldable phone may look like a wallet, but it's going to clean yours out. The jaw-dropping price tag. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez responds to a critical billboard with a clip from The Office. The giant Times Square sign bashes the Democratic Socialists for praising Amazon's decision to cancel their New York City headquarters. The Job Creators Network group writing, Amazon pullout, thanks for nothing, AOC. Ocasio-Cortez tweeting overnight that the sign is like a billionaire's version of this scene from The Office.
We have bubblegum shrimp, red lobster down there. This is the heart of civilization right here.
Ocasio-Cortez trying to express that she thinks the Times Square sign is out of touch. 25,000 jobs. Well, the attorney representing the Covington Catholic student suing the Washington Post says the lawsuit is not just about seeking $250 million. Now, Lynn Wood says that Nicholas Sandmann's image is now tarnished.
Think about what this young boy is having to deal with at age 16 when the entire world saw him the way the media portrayed him as literally the face of evil. It is inexcusable, reprehensible conduct by the media. And the Washington Post led the way.
Sandmann's lawsuit claims the Post published a series of false and defamatory stories in an attempt to smear him because he was wearing a MAGA hat. The president tweeting, quote, "Go get them, Nick. Fake news." Well, the Fox Business Alert for you now. A major privacy group demanding answers from Google over a hidden microphone planted in one of their devices. Tracy Carrasco from our sister network, Fox Business, here with more on the possible privacy invasion. Good morning.
Good morning, Heather. Yes, the Electronic Privacy Information sent a letter to the FTC demanding it take action against Google and putting a warning out there for consumers and the risk that they could be at. Now, this after Google admitted it made a mistake in not disclosing that its home alarm systems, the Nest Guards, had microphones in them. The microphone had never been listed on any sort of tech specifications. It was not publicized from Google. Google says this wasn't meant to be a secret, that the microphone on Nest devices is turned off by default, that any mic in a Nest device only turns on if users enable the voice-activated Google Assistant. Now, all of this was discovered when Google said, hey, we did a software update. Your Nest is now voice-activated. And a lot of people said, I didn't know it had a microphone in it. So that is where all of this stems from. People didn't know that these devices had those microphones in them.
Well, now you know.
Yep.
Something else we know is this phone is going to cost a lot of money because it folds. Is that the reason?
Yes, that's right. So Samsung, they have been teasing this foldable phone for a while, and we are finally learning some more details. It will officially launch on April 26th with a price tag. Get this, $1,980 for a foldable phone. So essentially, when it's closed up, it will look like a regular smartphone. Then you open it up, it's like a mini tablet, which is about 7.3 inches with an Infinity Flex display.
Wow.
That's what they're calling it. It also has 3 camera systems, 2 batteries. It's great for multitaskers because you're able to use 3 apps at once. And so you can jump back and forth between the closed version of it and then the open mini tablet version of it. Do we need all of that?
I don't know. It's amazing. Technically, it's amazing.
It
but
is.
$2,000. I don't know about
a lot
that.
of money. And that's just the starting price.
Yeah.
Probably goes way up from there.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thanks, Heather.
Well, the time now is about 10 minutes until the top of the hour. And who thought this was a good idea? The zoo letting kids play tug of war with lions and tigers. And the best video you'll see all day, the challenge these officers are sending out to all their brothers and sisters in blue.
Adventures, welcome to What Made America Great. Available now on Fox Nation. Start your free trial today.
Welcome back. Democratic presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard grilled by Meghan McCain on The View.
When I hear the name Tulsi Gabbard, I think of an Assad apologist. You have said that the Syrian President Assad is not the enemy of the United States.
Well, you're putting words in my mouth that I've never said.
You did not say that Syrian President Assad is not the enemy of the United States. Say it now. Clarify.
The issue here is how can we help alleviate the suffering of people?
Well, the Hawaii Congresswoman didn't clarify, but called the Syrian president a brutal dictator. She was widely criticized for meeting with Assad in 2016. He's been accused of using chemical weapons on his own people. Well, a music shop pushing away customers who support President Trump. At the Cleveland area store owner posting a sign with a letter on the front door reading, quote, "I feel unclean and dirty accepting money from you. Please politely shop somewhere else. Sorry, I would rather starve and close the store than participate in wrongdoing." The owner says he isn't banning Trump supporters. He's simply asking them to go somewhere else. And so we asked what you thought about all this, and Bruce on Facebook says, "I'm cool with that. He won't get a cent from me." Paul on Instagram says, "It's his business. He can be a small-minded, hyper-reactive, hating bigot if he wants to be, but it's a shame that we've come to this." And then Elaine on Facebook says, "Is that legal? I feel sorry for them. The president is trying to protect this country as best he can. Too bad they don't understand." Well, now it is time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Up first, the good. This police canine is pumped up about fitness. Look at Athos, the dog, doing push-ups with the officers. This is so cute. It was in New Hampshire at the police department there. The Auburn police now challenging other departments to see if they can do better. That's awesome. Well, now the bad. A zoo under fire for letting children play tug of war with lions and tigers. Now, the British Wildlife Center charged about $20 for the, quote, human versus beast challenge. Activists call the activity shameful and abusive. The zoo claims that the enrichment keeps the animals healthy. And then finally, I have to talk about this. The ugly. A Duke basketball player's shoe blows out less than a minute into the game. Zion Williamson's foot tearing through his sneaker as he dribbled away from a UNC player. Williamson, who is expected to be the #1 draft pick, by the way, in the NBA, has a minor knee sprain. The Tar Heels won that game 88-72. And I was watching. I didn't wear my Carolina blue today, though, but tickets $2,000 a pop for that. President Obama was there as well. So good game. Congratulations, Tar Heels. That wraps up this hour of Fox and Friends First. It continues right now. See you later. Bye.